Hey everyone, so today I'm riding the new 2025 Ducati Multistrada V2. Now, as I say in the video, I've owned literally almost every Ducati Multistrada there's been since they were released. I've owned 8 of them in the last 20 years. So that's quite a few. And it's one of those motorcycles that redefined the whole category, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the video. But at a high level, up until the first Multistrada, sport touring bikes were traditionally fully faired sport bikes with an upright riding position. The engine was derived from a track bike, a clip-on bar, top of a tank, street-going sports bike or super sport bike. And panniers were thrown on, sometimes a top box, more upright position, not clip-on bars. And that was the sport tourer that certainly my generation was raised riding. And sure, there were dirt bikes that today have evolved to become ADV bikes, big heavy tanks that you see on the streets. And over the last few years, you've seen this sort of resurgence, I think, in sport touring as a category, but it's become really complicated. Now, the traditional fully faired sport touring bike, like my Kawasaki 1100 SX that I've reviewed, personally, I just love the feeling of being on a bike like that. To me, maybe it's a generational thing. That is a proper motorcycle. I feel like I'm on a motorcycle with that bike. You know, I'm part of the bike. It's upright, but not too upright. It's got a nice 17-inch front wheel and a 17 rear. And for me, I feel that connection. Now, the Multistrada, when it was first launched, was really a sport bike on stilts. You know, they took that fantastic Ducati Desmo engine, the 1000 and the 996, and put it on stilts with a 17-inch front and a 17-inch rear. And you went riding, and it was incredible. And I rode mine all over the US. I had one in New Zealand as well. And I think over the years, the category has become sort of this, I don't know, this fleet of big, heavy tanks. And for the few times that I go off-road, it's nice to have the utility of a ADV bike. But my feeling is that, well, there are other options you can get if you just want to do a little bit of off-roading from time to time. Now, the Multistrada is a bike that I've loved, and I know that this new engine is amazing because I rode the V2 Panigale a couple of weeks ago, and I'll put a link up here for that. But while I know the engine's going to be great, as someone that likes to be fully engaged with the bike on the road, what I'm curious is as to whether or not this feels that way still. Because they're getting bigger. It's almost like they're trying to be all things to all people now with this Ducati V2. And the emergence of smaller, more lightweight sport tourers, like the Tiger 800, the Tracer 9 GT, even the Turismo MV Augusta that I rode the other day, which admittedly is in a different category in terms of price, just feel more flickable and more nimble and yet still very capable. So let's go take this Multistrada for a ride and we'll see what you guys think, and I'll give you my thoughts at the end. Well, good morning everyone. Welcome to the beautiful, sunny, balmy city of Seattle. Well, that could be said for the first couple of months of summer. Most of the time it's not so balmy, but we'll take it when we can get it. And talking about balmy and shiny and beautiful, behold the new Ducati Multistrada V2. Now this is the V2, not the V2S. V2S has the full skyhook suspension and cruise control and all that fun stuff. But this is the new model, and
bit of background, I've actually owned pretty much every Multistrada since they first came out in the 2003. I've gone through all the cycles, all the way out to the V4 and the V4 Pike Peak, the 950S, and I've ridden them all, the 1260s, and don't worry about me, I'm just recording, it's okay. Questionable taste of that sport jacket, but I won't hold that against you. So, what I'll tell you straight away is that I have actually sat on it already. And first thing I noticed was, holy shit, this thing is really, really light. I'm talking crazy light. It's incredible. If you've ever owned a Multistrada, you will notice that straight away. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. It's actually shocking how light it is. Like, it's shocking. It's like, you know, I rode the new V2 Panigale recently, and I think I told you guys how shocked I was. Like, how well Ducati have spread the needle, or sort of threaded the needle, I should say, with that new Panigale between the Super Sport, the old Super Sport, and the old Panigale V2. And I think they're really trying to do the same with this. But I wouldn't say they're threading the needle. I think what they're really doing with this is continuing to evolve their twin-cylinder platform in a way that I think is very positive for all motorcyclists. Now, a lot of Ducati purists will say it's not so positive because they want the Desmobronic engine, they like the single-sided swing arm, if you're a V2 fan, for example. But I think that for the majority of riders, at the end of the day, they're a business. This bike and what they're doing with the V2, moving away from valves to a more modern platform, is going to serve them very, very well in the future. And so this bike is 30 pounds lighter than the previous one, and you feel it straight away. It is so different. And getting back to like Ducati appealing to the majority of motorcyclists, you know, weight is a factor, confidence is a factor, rideability is a factor. I think all Italian motorcycles, depending on the brand, are famous for having these quirks. And some people really like the quirks because it makes them actually have to ride. They take pride in knowing that they can ride a slightly quirky motorcycle. Others, who are probably new to motorcycling, want something that's a little bit more approachable, a little more confidence inspiring. And that is where Ducati are going. And, you know, it's kind of a religious topic for a lot of people. You talk about the trellis frame on the Monster going away. You talk about the Panigale moving away from a single-sided swing arm, which they've done a few times and gone back to, by the way. And the latest, of course, is the Desmobronic engine, and moving away from the valves. And, you know, at the end of the day, shit changes. And there are some brands that never recognize that shit has changed, and then they come close to going out of business. There's a particular American one with the names H and D in it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Harley hater. I've owned Harleys. I actually rode a Harley from Seattle to New York and back once. So getting back to this new Multistrada V2, light. Oh my God, it is so light. It is unbelievable. It's super approachable. I'm 6 foot, about 210 pounds. I'm flat-footed, as you can see here. And this is the standard seat, though I do sell a higher seat as well. The instrument cluster is upgraded a lot, as is the switch control. This new jog dial here is completely new switch gear. If you want turn-by-turn navigation, you have to pay for that separately. I think it's It's about $600. If you want heated grips, you have to pay for that separately. And if you want cruise control, you'll get that on the S version. Now this has never been ridden, it's their brand new demo. So I'm not going to be caning it. Like literally there's 0 miles on it. See that on the trip meter? I suppose the question is around evolution versus revolution. If you think about Ducati, well, they've evolved for sure, particularly the reliability department. No one talks about Ducatis not being reliable anymore. That's an old thing that no one talks about anymore. They've definitely evolved in terms of their rideability, which I talked about earlier. And I'd say revolutions have been in areas around how they're able to produce a V4 engine that doesn't require, you know, such regular service intervals as the old ones did. Also, you know, the work they've done on their ride-by-wire suspension is truly revolutionary, just incredible work. And, you know, on the racetrack, they really pioneered aero, whether you love or hate aero. I'm not a huge fan of aero. The other change is, in terms of the aesthetics, there's a lot more black on the bodywork. And I really like the way it balances the red out. I was looking at the green one also, and the green's really nice, but it just feels wrong to buy a green one. And this red just seems to pop for some reason a lot more than it did on my old Multistrada 950. The screen is pretty much the same as before. It has the same, you can just up and down here nice and easily. But they've also added these winglets here, these wind deflectors on the side, which we didn't have on the previous model. I'm not going to go through every single spec pound for pound on this yet. I'll put some of that up above me here on the screen. I find that going through specs can be just kind of, you guys should tell me, I just find it to be a little bit of a, yeah, okay, I can get that anywhere. Now, if you're looking at bikes comparatively and the same kind of, you know, use case, then I think it's really good to do that, and I try and do that. I did that recently with my MV Agusta review, even though that's in a sort of a league of its own, I suppose. But really, this model does go up against things like the Tracer 900 GT, like the other tool rounders in the category, the GSX S1000, and bikes like that, the new Tiger 800. Now, the Tracer 9 GT, the MV Agusta I rode, the Tiger 800, they all have smaller front wheels. They all have 17-inch front wheels. Now this has a 19-inch front wheel. But don't let that fool you. I know from experience riding these bikes over the generations that the 19-inch is very, very flickable, much more flickable than you would expect. And certainly a lot more flickable than an adventure bike would be. And I don't call this an adventure bike. I believe that this is a modern tall rounder sports touring bike. Now the standard suspension is very good, very, very good. I'm very impressed. Of course, it is electronic suspension. You can adjust the preload and the sag and preload front and rear as well. Whereas with the Skyhook suspension, you can't do that. It's completely electronic. Now, the tank itself, I'm trying to remember my old bike, my old V2, my old 950 Multistrada, sorry. This tank feels more sculpted, sort of sharper on each side, which is nice, gives you that kind of wide berth feeling, which I kind of like on a tank. Ducati sport bikes, I find, or track bikes and sport bikes, the tanks tend to be a little bit more narrow. I prefer a wider tank. The Aprilias have very nice wide tanks, which are great for locking on and hanging off, which you're not going to be doing on this. So that's okay. But it does give you a nice feeling of sort of, I don't know if the word is, it's a very commanding seating position. It feels more commanding, if that's the right word, than my old 950 did. So if I was to sum up my first impressions so far in the first sort of 5 or 10 minutes of riding it, there's one word, and that would be refinement. It's just more refined. And that's not a bad thing. It's easy to think about refinement and go, well, I mean, not much has changed. It's just kind of a few tweaks. No, a lot has changed. It feels like a different bike. But the areas there it feels different, excuse me, are in the areas of refinement. It's lighter. It's more approachable. It has a presence to it. It makes you feel good when you sit on it. You know you're sitting on some seriously premium kit. And, you know, I made a video a few weeks ago about, like, it's so easy to just overanalyze motorcycles. You know, look at all the specs and all of this and that. At the end of the day, I still believe in buying the bike that makes you feel good. At the end of the day, that's what's most important, is how does it make you feel, both when you ride it and when you get off it and look back at it when you park it or whatever. Now, if all you care about is one thing, and that is outright speed and performance, sure, then you go buy, you know, the Ducati Multistrada RS, which is the fastest sport, you know, tour-rounder sport touring bike on the planet, or go and buy the Kawasaki H2 SX, which I've reviewed. But for me, I don't want that on the street. That's the track. Now, the seating position feels basically the same as the old model. Okay, so I'm going to take you on the same road that I took the MV Agusta on a few days ago. Now, part of me feels it's not completely fair to compare the two bikes. The MV Agusta that I rode was a 2003 model, but it is still their current model, and so nothing has changed. Now, as I said, the MV Agusta has a much shorter turning circle. It has a shorter wheelbase. It has a smaller wheel. It has a 17-inch front wheel. So, you know, the MV Agusta is, I would say, a lot more raw. It feels more raw. It feels, you know, frankly, 3 years older. But it is a inline triple. It has a shorter wheelbase. It definitely feels more flickable. Almost like, I've said, it almost feels like a supermoto, even though it's not a supermoto. And it almost feels a bit like a cross between a hypermotard and a multistrada. You know, a whole lot of fun. You know, very desirable. I wouldn't call it luxurious, just a shit ton of heritage and tradition. You know, Ducati also has that. I think the Turismo just feels, in the first instance, just a lot more sporty and more flickable, and that's fine. You know, it's I would say it really kind of sits in a segment of its own. And if you want to see the video, I'll put a link to that up here somewhere. So let's get back to the Multistrada. Now, off camera, I did stop for a while and sort of sat there with the heat of the engine. Now, today, it's a pretty cool day in Seattle. It's like, it's about 60 degrees out. And, you know, these bikes, these twins from Ducati are known for being pretty hot. Certainly sitting there, this felt hot. It didn't feel as hot as the 950S did, or the previous V2 Multistrada, but it still felt hot. And I would say that if I was, you know, in, you know, 80, 90 degree temperature, I would feel it more. But once I get going, it feels cooler. And Ducati have talked about these new vents they have down here as being part of the solution for that. And I'd say so far, definitely I can feel that the cooling of the engine happening, and frankly my legs feeling a lot less toasty. And I do like riding on roads where you don't quite know what you're going to get. You know, you're going to get a bit of roadworks, you're going to get a lot of stop and start. And if you're going to only have one motorcycle and you don't have the luxury of having many, That's where a model like the V2 Multistrada, more so than the V4, which is heavier and just a completely different animal, has a lot to offer. This road is called High Bridge Road. One of my favorite roads to just get a feeling for it. Now, this is brand new rubber, brand new tires, brand new engine. So it definitely is less intentionally planted than the MV Agusta. You feel that straight away. You definitely feel that the larger front wheel, the 19-inch front wheel. And I know these bikes really well. I've ridden Multistradas for a long time. So for me, it's not about getting used to the bike at all. I understand this motorcycle really well. But, again, when you're riding any motorcycle, you want to be really loose on the bars. You don't want to be holding it like this. Because when you're clenching on too hard on any motorcycle or bicycle for that matter, that just creates natural friction on top of the gyroscope, right? Something like this is not going to want to move, but like this, the gyroscope wants to move, and I see that from a lot of riders who are less experienced. Maybe they're nervous, I don't know, but you're not going to fall off the motorcycle if you're holding it nice and light. It's going to be, in fact, the motorcycle's not going to ride as well when you're holding it like this, because look, you're like this, it doesn't want to do anything. When you're like this, the gyroscope's just going to move the way you want it to move. So, first impressions, again, you really have to steer the bike. You feel that front end more. You need to be a little bit more intentional. It's not like you have to force it or anything, and it certainly points in the direction you want it to go, don't get me wrong, but it points in the direction, first impressions again, in a different, less focused way than like my Ninja 1100 SX, for example, or some of the other tall rounders of 17-inch front wheels. Like the engine note, while it's there, it's not as prolific as it is on other bikes. You can get a full system for this. You can get a slip-on exhaust for it. So it's a very cruisy kind of feeling. It's a less urgent. It's not sort of begging me to ride it fast, which the MV does. I think that's kind of the Frankenstein, motard whack, supermoto whack, tall rounder kind of feeling of the bike, it just kind of feels like it's always asking you to ride a lot harder. The Multistrada it's not like, screaming at me to like, go fast. But I know that if I decide I want to really push it, it's going to happily oblige. It'll go as peaceful or as less peaceful as you want it to be. And the refinement just provides that sort of that desire on tap. You just kind of decide how you want to ride. The girth of the bike, the distance from here to the bars, very, very different than some of the other bikes, certainly in the category, which tend to be closer. Certainly the MV was just a lot closer. My arms were bent the whole time. Whereas on this, I can literally just kind of ride like that. Some people like that, some people don't. And again, that just comes down to, there's just so much choice now in these categories. So while I'm following this classic Ford Mustang, I'm not going to be dragging me or going crazy. We've got some nice little tight twisties up here, which are kind of nice to get a feeling. So I'm in second there. It's a little bit jerky, trying to figure out where the rev range is at. The rev range feels a little bit more compressed than the previous model that I owned. So that's sort of figuring out where it wants to be between second and or third. Felt a little bit confused, but I think that's really just getting used to how this engine runs. And so I could try and run this. I'm going to stay in second here. Oh, it's smoother. Yeah, I think it really is about getting to know the bike and where the rev range likes to sit. Now on the EMV when I rode it, I was kind of hanging off and going a bit crazy. This is just kind of like a nice lounge chair, but it's not like a big boring lounge chair. It's definitely a Ducati. Definitely bouncing around a decent amount. This tends to be kind of a bouncy road. And again, on this model, even though this doesn't have the skyhook suspension, the suspension is adjustable, so you can dial it in. Definitely feel that 19-inch front. It's interesting. I'm in two minds as to whether I like a 19-inch front on any motorcycle, frankly. And again, it's going to come down to your preference, but I'd say for all-day comfortable touring, a 19-inch front is really nice. When you get into more twisties, it can be, for me, it feels a bit limiting. But it could also be just getting used to the bike, right? It's I haven't ridden a bike of a 19 for a while, so I'm probably sure that after a day or two of riding, I would forget that it's there. I like this road because there's some sort of later braking sort of opportunities here to get a feel for how it does, and like, you know, this is a 20 mile an hour. So I'd just say, to sum it up, while on the face of it, you could look at this bike and go, well, really, it's just a evolution. I think it falls somewhere between an evolution and a revolution. I think it's an evolution in terms of the refinement of this V2 engine, and moving away from a Diabronic based belt-based V2. That is definitely an evolution as far as the engine goes, but it might be a revolution for Ducatistas who are just very traditional. I think that where it probably feels like, and I'd say the other refinements, just you know, the addition of some new aero here and there, things like these little winglets up here, which definitely make a difference. The screen is really good. It's actually probably the best screen I've seen on a Multistrada. Really, like, really hardly any buffeting. It's really good. I would say it's more a revolution in terms of the approachability of the bike for folks that just aren't used to riding Italian motorcycles. I mean, you could get on this bike, and you know, you're not going to feel as like as though you have to learn the Italianness of it, I suppose, is the question. I mean, you definitely get that feeling when you ride like a Moto Guzzi. Definitely if you ride like an MV. With this, it just feels just more, I don't think boring's the word, it just feels more familiar. And I think that's where it's going to be a revolution for the type of rider that Ducati is going to attract with this bike. And there's nothing wrong with that type of rider, by the way. I've owned many Ducatis, and I don't feel like this is any less of a Ducati at all. Now, if you have multiple motorcycles and you want something just a little punchy and just a little bit different to go in that stable of bikes, then this probably isn't it. You probably, if you want something that's punchy and will tour a bit, but you also have like a nice classic touring bike like I have my Ninja 1100 SX, and you know, and if you've got the money, then I'd probably buy the MV over this for that reason, just because it's a little bit different, it's a little punchy. But if you can really only have one bike, and you want premium, and you want luxury, and you want performance, and you want serviceability, and you want parts availability, and you want all of those things, then this is, I think, frankly, probably best in class. So I hope you enjoyed this content. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. This is not my day job. It is not something I rely on to pay the bills, but I do enjoy doing these videos, and I do put time into them. And if you think that time is well spent and you find these reviews useful, and you enjoy the videos, just like, subscribe, and if you think they're shit, or maybe you think they could be better, tell me where you think I could improve, because I love the feedback, and I've had some really good suggestions from a few of you already that I'm working on now, so sort of keep that coming. Until next time, I'll see you later. Ride safe, and enjoy the summer, winter, whatever it is, wherever you guys are in the world. Thanks for listening. I'll see you later. Bye.
So, look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think this bike is a great bike, but it's not for me anymore. Sorry, Ducati. I'm still a Ducati fan, but for me, this bike, it just didn't feel exciting. Just felt quite utilitarian. The engine was great. The quick shifter was great. It was comfortable. The engine is evolutionary, not revolutionary. It's expensive when you look at some of the options it goes up against. Now, the build quality, fit and finish, of course, all wonderful, as you'd expect from Ducati. This base price for this V2 is around $15,500 US. For the V2S, it's about $19,000. You don't have to go too far to find other bikes that are going to do really great in this category, and in many ways feel more engaging. And so if you're looking for engaging, sporty ride that makes you feel excited, I actually don't think this is the bike. But if you want a bike that does everything you need and you can only have one bike, then it's a great bike. I would also say, if you've never experienced Italian motorcycles, or Ducatis in particular, in the past, Ducatis were less approachable when you're coming from a Japanese bike. They took a bit of getting to know, a bit of getting to used to. Less so recently. But with this bike, you'll feel comfortable straight away. So that's just my opinion. I'm not saying don't go buy it. It's not a bad bike. It's just not for me. And I'm lucky enough to have more than one motorcycle in my stable. So, I have other bikes to choose from. But for this one, I think I'm going to pass. If it was me, that's my opinion. I'm always going to tell you how I think. So, yeah. Would love to hear your comments in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And maybe I'll see you again soon. Bye.